One.
Welcome to this pedestrian safety virtual training for law enforcement. My name is Rick Sullivan, and I am the law enforcement liaison for Rhode Island. In 2019, nationwide, there were 6,206 pedestrians killed in traffic crashes. Many of these tragic losses were avoidable. This training was created and is available to assist you and your community to reduce these unacceptable losses. The National Highway Traffic Administration's Region 1 area of responsibility include the states of Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont. The 5 states combined their resources and collaboratively created this pedestrian safety training. Each state developed and contributed specific pedestrian safety sections, which were collated into one PowerPoint product, facilitating this fluid delivery. Although the entire area of the 5 Region 1 states just make up 66,000 square miles, thinking about that where Texas has 268,000, it contains many diverse driving and pedestrian safety environments. From mostly rural populated areas of Maine to the heavily traveled metropolitan areas of Boston and Providence, pedestrian safety is a primary issue. The following training will provide tactics and strategies adaptable to any community. In addition to the PowerPoint training, pertinent reference material will also be supplied. I will now turn over the training to Andy Tainch. He's the program coordinator for Rhode Island's Office on Highway Safety. Andy.
Thanks, Colonel. So, like you said, my name is Andrew Tainch. I work for the Rhode Island Department of Highway Safety as a program coordinator. And I'm going to start out by giving you some national data, kind of the 30,000-foot overview. So we know that October is Pedestrian Awareness Month, Pedestrian Safety Month. And that's one of the reasons why we're here putting this presentation together. So with our national data, we know that on average, a pedestrian is killed approximately 88 minutes in a traffic crash somewhere in the United States. 16 people a day and approximately 115 people a week nationwide are dying on our roadways, these pedestrians. And these vulnerable road users are one of the most at-risk groups of people out there utilizing the roads. And even though they only account for 3% of all Americans involved in the traffic crashes, they represent 17% of all traffic fatalities nationwide. And we know that in 2019, 36,096 people tragically lost their lives. We're here to highlight the fact that 6,206 of them were pedestrians that were killed. And there were over 70,000 pedestrian injuries nationwide. So over the last 10 years or so, pedestrian fatalities have increased 53% from 2009, while at the same time, all of the traffic deaths have only increased by 2%. So there's been quite a jump in pedestrian fatalities. So we have to look at the data. So we're always analyzing data. We're trying to figure out the wheres and the whys and the hows and how we can minimize these fatalities. So where are the crashes happening? 81% of the time, these crashes are occurring in urban areas. Not that that should surprise anybody that, where there's more people, there'll be more crashes, but we're looking for the hot spots. So the urban areas, and they're occurring not at intersections. So mid-block crossings, pedestrians who are in the roadway where motorists don't expect them to be there. 74% of the time, they're not at an intersection. So when are they happening? During darkness. 3/4 of the time, these crashes occur in the hours of darkness. Then 20% of the time they occur during daylight, and then dusk and dawn has the disbursement also. We also have national data from 2018, because that's the last time that they actually were able to really crunch the data. 2019 data just came out. And when we look at the the graphs and the hotspots, we realize, and not that it should be a surprise, that weekend nights are where the majority of these crashes are occurring. The season's also shorter daylight hours makes it more dangerous for pedestrians at night, where they're more at risk, where drivers can't see them. So in the evenings and hours of darkness is where the majority of these fatal crashes are occurring. So who are our victims? 69% of the time, they're male. And the overall male pedestrian fatality rate per 100,000 people was 2.71, which is more than double the rate for females, which is 1.14. So males are dying at twice the rate of females. And the highest overall fatality rates by age were people who are over 80 years old, then 55 to 59, and 60 to 64. So our older people are more at risk also, partly because they might take a little more time to get across the road, but also when they are injured, they don't heal as easily as others, and they are more susceptible to injuries. So here's another troubling statistic. In almost half of all crashes, either the pedestrian or the driver have been drinking alcohol. And anytime we as law enforcement are investigating a car impaired crash, we should be looking for impairment. Not only on the driver, but also look at the actions of the pedestrian, because many times the pedestrian unfortunately carries some of the burden. 33% of fatal pedestrian crashes had a pedestrian with a BAC greater than 0.08, and 16% of fatal pedestrian crashes had a driver with a BAC of 0.08 in 2018. So because pedestrian enforcement and safety isn't mainstream enforcement, if you will, we try to break it down to the basics. So this diagram here shows, what is the actual definition of a crosswalk? And we know that pedestrians are struck in unmarked crosswalks 31% of the time. So this diagram here shows that there's 5 different crosswalks. There's obviously the marked crosswalk painted in the roadway, but there are 4 other unmarked crosswalks. And anywhere there's a lateral line at an intersection is an unmarked crosswalk. And many different states have different definitions. I do the Rhode Island training for our area, and basically that's what our definition is. And you should familiarize yourself with your definition is. And we also recognize that speed is a factor. The higher the speed, the more likely pedestrians will be seriously injured or killed. 9 out of 10 peds survive crashes when hit by a vehicle doing 20 miles an hour. That drops to half, 50%, when a car is doing 30 miles per hour. And when a vehicle is doing 40 miles an hour, only 10% survive, 1 out of 10. So speed is unfortunately definitely intertwined with the fatal pedestrian crash issue. And vehicle types matter also. These days, there are a lot more SUVs on the road and bigger trucks, and the big boxy front ends, typically higher off the ground, they cause more damage to people when they hit them. So instead of a conventional motor vehicle striking a pedestrian down around the knees, there's a good chance that pedestrian could be taking the brunt of the blow in their torso, which clearly causes more trauma. So we recognized back in 2017, when we had a spike in fatal pedestrian crashes, that we needed to do something. We looked at the data, because we analyze the data all the time, and it jumped out at us that we needed to do something. So we put together a enforcement operations how-to guide for our local law enforcement, and we conducted training to teach officers what the problems were and best practices on how to go about the problem. So the first thing we did was data. Weekly, we put out our statewide numbers, and this shows in 2017 we had 21 fatal crashes involving pedestrians, which was 25% of our 84 fatal crashes. So 25% of our fatalities were pedestrians, and we found that to be shocking, and we needed to do something. So far, right now in Rhode Island, unfortunately, 25% of our pedestrians are also fatalities, with 14 of our 57. So we still have a lot of work to do, but we're doing the best that we can, hopefully. And again, we give the basics. We start out with what is a crosswalk. This is the definition for Rhode Island. Your state will have its own definition, probably relatively close, but you should familiarize yourself with what that is and make sure your officers know, because we found that a lot of the times our officers didn't know what the actual definition of a crosswalk was. Everybody knows the painted lines in the roadway, but the unmarked portions, with the connections of the lateral lines of the sidewalks on opposite sides of the highway measured from the curbs, kind of confuse them. So we make sure they know that. We let them know right from the beginning what's going on. And we utilize the 3 E's. I know there's 3 E's, there's 4 E's, there's 5 E's. I keep it basic with our training, and we focus on engineering, education, and enforcement. And what we hope for is that we're going to significantly increase driver yielding and improve pedestrian behavior. We're going to attack it on both fronts. We're going to educate the people. We're going to look at how our crossings and our roadways are engineered. And then we're also going to do enforcement on top of it. So what does an effective pedestrian safety enforcement program look like? So this is what we put together. We're going to train our officers in all aspects of ped safety. We're going to come up with a systematic approach to reach out to the public and get our message out there. And we're going to let the people know that ped safety is the responsibility of pedestrians and motorists. Both groups are required to comply with applicable laws. We have to share the road with each other. So therefore, we all have to get along. Let's be aware of one another, and let's work together to keep everybody safe and get everybody to where they're going. We also want to establish effective lines of communication with our media. Law enforcement can't do their jobs effectively without getting their message out. And the media is definitely an effective medium to help get that message out to the people. And we're going to incorporate all our appropriate data and information to clearly identify what needs to be done. We're going to work with our engineers and our DPW departments to make sure that where there is a crosswalk, it's noticeable, it's well signed, there aren't tree branches blocking signage or things of that nature. We're going to work with our court system and our judicial system. A lot of the times they're not used to these violations also. So we're going to let them know ahead of time that people are coming in, that we're going to be doing these enforcement efforts and people are going to be coming in, and be prepared for it. And we're also going to continually evaluate our crossings and say, if we've got a problem at a particular location, maybe there's a better way to do things. Maybe we're going to use an RRFB, the rectangular rapid flashing beacon, or things of that nature. And we're going to look at our data. Everything we do is about data. So the first thing we want to do is select a proper location. We're going to look at our data, and we're going to look for existing issues. We're going to find those hotspots. And where we're going to do an enforcement program, we're going to look for a place where these safety problems exist, but also make sure that it's a very visible, well-marked, clearly signed location. We're going to do a survey ahead of time, and we're going to see what the percentage of people are who are yielding to pedestrians, who are not yielding to pedestrians. So we're going to get a baseline ahead of time. We're going to do a safety briefing. Safety should be stressed. We're putting a police officer in the road as a decoy, and we don't want that individual to get run over. So safety has to be stressed. And also, we don't want to put the public in danger with people slamming on their brakes or doing things like that. So we actually do a pre-operation briefing form, a type of op order, if you will, and we're going to include that in your materials as an example. So training is important. In Rhode Island, we require all our officers who are going to do these enforcement initiatives to attend a training event. And we're going to let them know that they have to fully understand the objectives of what we're trying to accomplish. And they have to understand what constitutes a violation. We found in Rhode Island, but the way our yielding to a pedestrian statute is written, that vehicles on the opposite side of the road don't have to yield to the pedestrian until that individual is almost at the center line of the roadway or in near danger of being struck. And officers didn't understand that. So it was good for us to clarify the statute and what constitutes a violation to them, because this isn't something that they utilize all the time. And we want to let everybody know that this is about saving lives and preventing injuries and has zero to do with violations and revenue. Everybody thinks the police are road pirates and they're out there just to make a buck. And that's not the case at all. Our goal is to make the roadways safer. So we bring the officers in to make sure that they get the big picture. It's not just about going out and working 4 hours overtime. We're trying to make the roadways safer and gain compliance. We reach out to our judiciary. If we do a large enforcement effort with a 2-week block or something like that, we can expect a lot of people will be getting sent into court. So we go to our court of jurisdiction and we let them know, do you want to pick a particular day for all these violations to be assigned to? And talk to the prosecutor and discuss an enforcement plan and what he or she wants to see in a violation. Sometimes you can even talk to maybe a judge or a magistrate and see what they want to see, what they're looking for. Some of them are more than willing to have that type of discussion with you. Talk to your prosecutor and see who's going to have to testify if a citation goes to trial. Does the testifying officer need to have personally observed the violation? I would think so. But some operations are set up with spotters and then citing officers. Can the officer write a violation based upon the word of a spotter? In some places, yes. In some places, maybe no. It's good to know ahead of time. Now, what kind of advance notice should be provided to the community through press releases, social media, et cetera, et cetera? And effective public safety enforcement is, pedestrian safety enforcement is crucial to take part with public outreach activities. We want to get our message out there, and we want to get it out there as much as we can, because that's going to promote compliance and increase our likelihood of success. So we're going to do community education supported by our data-driven enforcement. And we want the community to be involved. So maybe hold some neighborhood meetings or community meetings and talk about the problem and let them know what's going on. And that will help the public to fully understand their responsibilities. And we want to promote our partners with our local media, build some relationships, and hopefully they'll be there to help us out in the future with our message. We like to educate the public at least 1 week prior to beginning the campaign. Do a kickoff event, maybe a press event, do something on your social media, some educational brochures, handouts, use your variable message boards and other types of manner to get that message out to the people. Make sure the participating officers know what's going on. They get the big picture. They understand exactly why we're looking to do what we do. And we're also going to prepare and publish a post-operational assessment of the campaign immediately following. We're going to let everyone know that we started off here, and based upon our enforcement, this is where we're at now. Hopefully we've gained more compliance than we had prior to, and hopefully we've saved some lives. So we talked about media outreach. We really recommend partnering with the media. And we want to raise public awareness and change the people's behavior. And the media helps us get that message out. We're going to do press releases, develop press packets, maybe hold a press conference, and then give the media some follow-up. So one of our local cities here in Rhode Island, Warwick, they came up with a great video where they reached out to the media, and the media covered it and gave them some really good coverage. They came up with a logo for their press releases. They personalized their message. And part of this handout, they had information on the inside of it, which talked about pedestrian safety and the applicable laws so that people had the information. Here's an example of Hoboken, New Jersey. They use their social media, their Twitter account, and they tell people, hey, we're out on this street at this time. They even name the officers out there, and they give pictures. And Jen from New Hampshire, she's going to talk about more about media outreach later on in this presentation. So how to effectively implement our program. So in Rhode Island, we worked off the NHTSA Pedestrian Safety Enforcement Operations How-To Guide, and we're going to provide that information to you also, so you have it. So we Rhode Islandized it, but basically that guide gives you from A to Z how to conduct a proper enforcement safety operation. So this, for example, 162 feet upstream from the crosswalk, they put a cone out, and they give cars 162 feet to stop in a 25-mile-per-hour zone. And then they have a spotter and a sighting officer. So if the vehicle travels that 162 feet and doesn't yield to the pedestrian, they know they have a good violation. So if you think about your regular 25-mile-per-hour zone, your total stopping distance is probably 55 feet, 25 feet of your perception time, 31 feet to brake. This type of operation provides 3 times that safe stopping distance. So it's more than fair to the motorist. We're targeting the motorist that doesn't pay attention or doesn't yield to the pedestrian at all. Most of our operations are conducted in 4-hour segments, typically during daylight hours. They can be done with a minimum of 2 officers, 1 decoy and 1 sighting officer, but it works best with 4 or more, we found. And we should do them on a consistent basis, every 4 to 6 weeks, and then hopefully work that into our patrol duties also, where patrol officers are helping. We phased in our plan when we do it here in Rhode Island. First, we educate the people, then we give warnings, and then we do enforcement. And that helps promote community buy-in. But at any phase, if we see something egregious or life-threatening, we don't hesitate to issue violations if we have to. If someone's at 60 miles an hour through our crosswalk down our 25-mile-an-hour road, that individual is definitely going to get stopped and cited. Again, so egregious behavior, what constitutes that? Excessive speeding, obviously if we get a drunk driver, a distracted driver, improper passing, if someone is too impatient and goes around someone else that's yielded to a pedestrian, we would go after that person. Any type of aggressive driving or any other flagrant violation that endangers the pedestrians or any other vulnerable road user. We also focus on, mostly we focus on motorists, but if a pedestrian's out there and does something dangerous, we'll also address that one. If they blatantly cross against a don't walk signal or blatantly jaywalk right in front of the operation, we will definitely address that one also. But we tend to scrutinize the motorists a little more than the pedestrians. Again, we want to be safe. We want to not do things during darkness or inclement weather. We want to properly train our officers. Our decoy is going to have highly visible bright clothing, an unobstructed view of traffic. Any vehicles that we stop, we're going to stop them in a safe location. We're going to pull them off to the side of the road. We don't want to put those people that are stopped in danger. And we want to avoid high-speed areas and multiple lane roadways. We don't want to put our decoy in danger. We don't want to try and stop buses or trucks because they need a greater stopping distance. And we have a safety plan also that if somebody is injured, how we're going to address it. That's all part of our pre-op order also. We're going to let our agency know that pedestrian enforcement is going on. We're going to let the officer in charge know the hours of the operation, and we're going to anticipate complaints. What we found a lot of the times is there are lots of people who don't know what entrapment is, enticing someone to do something they weren't inclined to do in the first place. But when they come across or they get stopped in one of these enforcement operations, they feel that they're entrapped, and they get on the phone, they make complaints, they go wait up the road, and they've got their video cameras out, and they're videotaping the operation to try and prove that we're not doing things right. So we anticipate complaints, and we minimize them by training our officers. And if you have to, you can show that we gave the media releases, we have the educational handouts, and we fully document all warnings and contacts. So, maybe you can say, hey, we stopped 300 cars, 200 of those were given warnings and 100 were given violations. And like any good highway safety program, we're going to evaluate it. We're going to evaluate it ahead of time with the survey. We're going to evaluate it afterwards. We're going to maybe reach out to local colleges or educational institutions to help crunch our data. We found that they've been very helpful in our state with their doing quantitative and qualitative statistical analysis. And we're looking for a reduction in crashes and increased pedestrian safety. That's the ultimate outcome. So we're looking to see if drivers are yielding to pedestrians at crosswalks more often. If speeds are lower, because we know that speeding is intertwined with pedestrian safety. A lot of the times with these enforcement operations, we bring out an extra officer to run radar. And we're also writing speeding violations also. And we're also looking to see if pedestrians are also being more cognizant of not jaywalking, stepping out into traffic, and utilizing their crosswalks. So again, we do a pre and post evaluation, and our evaluations help to show public enforcement efforts are working to protect the pedestrians, and it also might highlight some issues that need to be improved or changes that need to be made. Like maybe a crosswalk wasn't the best one to utilize because it wasn't properly painted, wasn't properly signed, and we can get our engineers to work on that. And obviously we're going to document the number of warnings, the number of citations, the number of educational contacts provided, and the number of drivers who correctly yielded to the decoys if possible. That's sometimes a big lift. Our infrastructure concerns, we're going to repaint our crosswalks if we have to, increase signing, make better speed limit signs. Maybe we have to put in some flashing beacons, some three-dimensional road markings, something to get people's attention. We're going to upgrade our pedestrian signals, enhance lighting or visibility at crosswalks, and trim those trees and bushes to improve sightlines. Sometimes things get pushed out of the way. Maintenance gets ignored sometimes, and we have to get our public works people out there to fix some issues. And that's really, in a nutshell, how we in Rhode Island did our program. The 3 E's are very, very important: to educate, to look at the engineering, and then the enforcement also, and do a total holistic program. So NHTSA has a lot of data. If you want to utilize your data, you can go to cdan.nhtsa.gov, and that will give you your state's traffic safety information. We call it STTSI. You can pull all that data up, and I also provide a link to our general laws, which give the pedestrian laws for Rhode Island so that the officers know where to look. I get calls all the time for data and things like that. So if I can teach officers to look up their own data, it makes my job a little easier. So that's that data there. I also end off with my contact information. There's my card. No matter where you are, where you're watching this, if I can help you in any way, don't hesitate to contact me. That's my cell phone number. It's always on. And my email is on my card there. Shoot me an email, give me a call, and I'll be happy to help you out in any way possible. And at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tom Reagan from the great state of Maine, who is their law enforcement liaison, and he's going to continue the presentation.
Thank you, Andrew. There's a lot of good information. I'm going to go the right way this time. My name is Tom Reagan. I'm the law enforcement liaison for the state of Maine, working for the Maine Bureau of Highway Safety. I'm going to talk to you specifically about Maine. This is my contact information. It's available on the slides. You can contact me anytime about pedestrian safety issues or any other highway safety issues. Pedestrian injuries by month. When we look at data, as Andrew said, it's very important to look at a little deeper in depth. You don't just look at the recent data. So we went back 6 years. As you can see what we have here for injuries per month. And we're at, if you add up all those numbers for injuries in the last 6 years, we're at 1,300, or just under 1,300 injuries. Days of the week are all over the board, but you can see where it happens. Andrew said his data was weekends. That was probably fatals, but this is injuries. Ours are lighter there, but maybe it's because people aren't out so much. The yearly average, we get 241 pedestrian injuries. When we look at fatals, we're approaching our worst months for fatals: November, December, and January. That could be because it's darker earlier, heavy snowbanks. People don't want to walk on sidewalks that are covered with snow. They're out in the roadway. And then we have July. So those are our high months. And if you look at the day of the week, it's all over the board. Friday nights, Saturday nights are busy. We average about 15. And sadly, we put this slide together a week or two ago, and already it's wrong because we just had another fatality this month, pedestrian fatality. Okay, when you're looking at law enforcement and these laws, you have to know what the definitions are. In Maine, a crosswalk means a portion of the way. I'm having some technical difficulty here. At an intersection or elsewhere that is distinctly indicated for pedestrian crossing by lines or other markings on the way surface. A curb All right, the definition of a curb is the edge. All right, the definition of a curb means the edge of the sidewalk or either edge of the usually traveled portion of the way. In Maine, a lot of roads don't have high sidewalks, so it goes basically from earth to earth, unpaved. A pedestrian means a person on foot or person in a wheelchair. All kinds of signs out there. Public way means a way owned and maintained by a government over which the general public has a right to pass. So that does not include malls and things. Those are private ways. Traffic control device, all these traffic control devices, it's a sign, a signal, a mark directed by the body or official to regulate, warn, or guide traffic. We have, in Maine, we list our vulnerable users. It's any pedestrian, anybody working on the roadway, person riding, guiding, or leading an animal, a person being guided by service animals, a person lawfully within a public way on any of these following devices. And there's a bunch of them. Bicycles, motorized bicycles, farm tractors, skateboards, roller skates, inline skates, scooters, mopeds, horse-drawn carriages, electrical personal assistant mobility device, wheelchairs, segways, and roller skis. Another important definition is way. A way means the entire width between boundary lines of a road. So that goes again from outside roadway to outside roadway, including the raised median in the middle. Now some of the laws. We go right to Title 29A, 2056, pedestrian traffic. Pedestrian may not walk on a public way when use of a sidewalk is practical. Where sidewalks are not provided, the pedestrian has to walk facing the traffic as close to the way as the shoulder as possible. An operator motive of a vehicle passing the pedestrian has to leave at least 3 feet. A pedestrian on sidewalks, if you're taking a turn across the roadway, or across the sidewalk rather, and into another roadway, you have to yield to pedestrians that are walking on that crosswalk or that walkway, that sidewalk. If they're in a marked crosswalk with no traffic control device, the operator must yield the right of way to the pedestrian crossing within that marked crosswalk. It also includes somebody with the invisible intent to enter that marked crosswalk. So the motorist has to be aware of what the pedestrians on the side of the road are doing. They have to watch for them making a move towards that, and that's sufficient to say, no lights, pedestrians got the right of way. Pedestrian crossing must yield the right of way to a vehicle when crossing a way other than a marked crosswalk, or if you have an available pedestrian tunnel. So no jaywalking. Pedestrians cannot cross between adjacent intersections at which traffic control devices operate except in a marked crosswalk. If they're crossing, they cannot cross an intersection diagonally or suddenly leave a curb without giving the operator or motorist time to react. When a vehicle is stopped to allow a pedestrian to cross, other vehicles are not allowed to pass that stopped vehicle. Due care is required. An operator of a vehicle shall exercise due care to avoid colliding with a pedestrian. Give warning sounds with a horn when necessary, not every time, just when necessary. Exercise good caution in observing a child or any other obviously confused, incapacitated, or intoxicated person. Failure to yield the right of way to a visually impaired pedestrian. That's a violation as well. You have to yield it if the person is carrying a cane or with an animal, a care dog. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer now. She's from New Hampshire, she's the Public Information Officer.
Safety. I'm sorry, I'm the Public Information Officer for the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety. Thank you, Tom, for the introduction. And I'm going to be bringing you through the effective pedestrian safety social media strategies as it relates to Pedestrian Safety Month. So this is a statistic that I like to share out. It's interesting in several ways. This statistic is, of course, prior to the public health crisis. And it's telling because it tells me that a majority of us are getting our information on some sort of social media platform. It also tells me that people are gathering their information by social media. I just need to go back to the screen. I apologize. Sorry about the confusion here. And it's also a great way for police departments to get out an effective message to their community as it relates to any particular traffic safety issue. So why use social media? Well, social media gives you a direct platform with minimal interference. It's fast because it's direct. You can do several things as it relates to your traffic safety messaging. You can post a press release, announce a major event or press conference. You can also take a specific pedestrian RSA and post that information out and share it. It's also low cost. It costs nothing to sign up for any of these social media channels, and it's very versatile in its use. As it relates to what's trending on social media, I like to say that people will go where the information is, which obviously it's on social media. And I know that a lot of you probably don't have a dedicated public information officer or a dedicated social media person to, in fact, track those trends. But the good news is that you don't have to have someone like me in your department. You have traffic safety partners who already do that legwork for you. I'm talking about NHTSA as well as the Governor's Highway Safety Association. So they will take that information and they'll package it into nice reports that you can share out amongst your followers. So again, the great news is that you don't have to do the legwork, it's being done for you. As it relates to what's trending out there, again, prior to the public health crisis, we were seeing that fatalities, pedestrian fatalities were increasing. And then fast forward, and we're all under safer at home guidelines. And we took that opportunity in New Hampshire to kind of see the trend between March of 2019 to March of 2020. And we were seeing that our pedestrian fatalities were increasing by 33% during that same period. And we took that information and put it into a press release, which got picked up by our media outlets. And again, as you're talking about trends that are going on social media, that's a great way to pick up on what's happening and to get the message out there to the public. In this next slide, I want to go over the process of putting together an effective campaign, because I want everyone to be thinking about it appropriately as it pertains to pedestrian safety and how you can take these techniques and follow it up in your own state. So as we go through this presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about community engagement, training opportunities, earned media versus paid media, and how that all ties into your social media campaign. So as we talk about community engagement, Andy touched upon it a little bit in his part of the presentation, and it's really a great way to get your partners on board with you if you're working with other law enforcement agencies or you are working on an enforcement issue such as pedestrian safety. For example, the pedestrian crosswalk safety operation that was happening in Rhode Island, that's a great way to use social media to get people talking about pedestrian safety and to advance that message. A lot of people take to Facebook or Twitter or any number of social media platforms to talk about those types of things, and it's a great time to show a human face to your department. A lot of people like to see some of the feel-good initiatives that police departments are working on, because it's not always just about the enforcement piece. It's also how you want to involve the people in your state and in your communities. It's also a great way to field any questions and to talk about some of the misconceptions or confusion as it relates to specific traffic safety issues. I know that Halloween's happening at the end of the month, and a lot of communities are talking about Halloween safety. So that would be a great way to involve your community, have them do a call out, perhaps have them post pictures of their little trick-or-treaters as they are out and about, wearing their high visibility gear, or they're using flashlights, things of that measure. It's just a great way to involve everyone. And the more transparent that a police department can be, the better it is for optics, as well as the better it is to get that message out there. This particular slide is from AAA and Save Kids Worldwide. It's just an example of some great messaging. This is stuff that's already put out there and that you can easily share on your social media platforms, and it talks about pedestrian safety tips as it relates to an event like Halloween. And AAA and Save Kids Worldwide, they just happen to be trusted traffic safety partners, so you know that the information that you're putting out there is cohesive with what most of us are saying in the region. In this particular case for social media, again, we're talking about, as we were going through the public health crisis, a lot of us were at safer at home guidelines. So a lot of people were at home on social media. So we took the opportunity, and again, each police department in the different states can also follow suit and do the same thing. So we tried to get messaging out as it related to drivers and pedestrians, just to get out there that, you know, pedestrian safety is not just about the motorist following the rules of the road. It's also about the pedestrian following the rules of the road as well. And we also followed that up with, you know, tying it into what was happening, making it, you know, more relatable as to what we were all going through. You know, people were getting out and trying to find ways to get out and exercise their legs, so to speak. So, you know, we put out messaging in regards to that. And then again, messaging as it related to the pedestrian. And we also used the hashtag Share the Road and Road Responsibility. Those came from our traffic safety partner, NHTSA. I find that hashtags are a great way to follow the trends and track the information as you're putting it out there. Going on to shared content, this is content that was already made up. And again, I know a lot of you don't have the time to come up with the original content, so a great resource to go to is NHTSA, the Governor's Highway Safety Association, or the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. They have some great pedestrian materials that you can put out. It's quick and easy. Everyone is Pedestrian, Scan the Street for Wheels and Feet, along with the 2 infographics as related to pedestrian safety, came from NHTSA. It's just great information that's easily shareable. And I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go back to this slide. The bottom slide is from the Governor's Highway Safety Association. It's their infographic, and I just used a New Hampshire stat. I find that people like to know what's happening nationally, but they also like it if you try to make it more relatable to your state. And then finally, from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, they have a campaign called Voices of Safety. Part of that includes pedestrian safety. So this was just a great message. And again, you know, use the hashtag Share the Road as a way to track that trend as well as advance the message. In this section, I'm just going to go over the social media do's and don'ts. Now, I know a lot of the departments out there probably have their own standard procedure that they follow, but I feel I would be remiss if I didn't go over some of the things in this section. So to start out with, ensure you have photo permission, especially as it involves children, before posting any pictures online. You also want to make sure you're blurring out pertinent information such as license plates or faces if you don't have permission to use that. Make sure your disclaimer is present on all social media platforms, and that includes information on how you monitor your pages, to call 911 in case of an emergency, you know, the review of your social media policies concerning hate speech, violence, etc. And an example of that would be, you know, this particular police department account is not monitored 24/7. To report a crime, dial 911. Now, I know I'm speaking to the choir when I say this, but you know that there are some people who will use your social media platforms to report a crime. So it's important that you put that disclaimer out there so that people know. You also want to verify your pages so the public knows your page is the appropriate official page to follow, and you know that it's a verified page by these check marks. And I put that out there because there have been some instances in our state where other people will put up fake police department pages. So you want to make sure that yours is the official. You want to show off your individual brand. Don't be afraid to be creative with original content. Have a consistent posting schedule. I like to post at least 3 times a day during the week. If it's a traffic safety initiative that we're working on, such as pedestrian safety, I do try to post at least 1 to 2 times a week on different aspects of that particular outreach. And if it's the weekend, going into the weekend, I'll make sure to post a schedule to have something go up at least in the morning, in the afternoon, and the early evening hours. You also want to stay on track with your messaging, keep it relevant to the topic and the brand. Do use multiple platforms that cater to your audience. You don't have to use all of the channels, but when you do use the channels that you do, make sure that it's on topic to what you're talking about. Definitely encourage constructive interactions if appropriate and if information can be released. So obviously you're not going to talk about an ongoing investigation. However, if you have a traffic safety enforcement initiative that is happening that relates to pedestrian safety, and people are having questions like where are you conducting these patrols and how do you go through the process, things of that nature, then that's definitely a good way to engage the public, but also a chance to advance the message and educate them on pedestrian safety. Some of the don'ts: don't be spammy, don't post, every 5 minutes. People tend to block you or they'll hide you in their feed, and then that defeats the purpose of social media. Don't use copyright images. Avoid acting like a robot. You definitely want to show your department's personality. Don't mix your personal page with your business page, and be mindful of who you follow. I would suggest not following political figures or activist groups because the business page is a reflection of you and your opinion. Don't ignore personal issues or threats, address them privately. I'm sure every department has their own protocol that they need to follow. Certainly do that. Definitely don't address that on Facebook. If you're using infographics and text from NHTSA or Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, use them as is. Don't veer off topic or offer up personal interjections. These materials have already been through the vetting process, so you can use them as is. And I use an example of one time I did post an infographic on pedestrian safety from NHTSA. And one of the talking points I used was something along the lines of pedestrians need to make sure that they're safe and that they're seen. Kind of putting the onus on the pedestrian, which was an error on my part because all of the activist group came out and came after me. So you definitely want to make sure that the talking points are on topic and you don't veer off of that. That's very important. As far as negativity, don't delete the comments, but if they happen to violate the community standards section, what I tend to do is screenshot it and keep a record of it. Stick to posts that are making the public aware of certain events or safety issues, and that will hopefully avoid any controversial comments. And release an update to post or a statement to address that. Going into earned media and how you can leverage that. Earned media is basically anything that is free. And a great example of earned media would be the press release. If you're putting out a press release, I would focus on pedestrian fatalities and any information pertinent to that. I would also share out current fatality stats. I know that media outlets like that information. Make sure you're sharing tips for motorists and vulnerable road users, and then you're doing a call out to the motorists and also the vulnerable road users to follow all rules of the road and to get home safely. As that relates to TV, radio, and newspaper interviews, I find that if you include any original content that you have, pictures of an event or a picture of an enforcement initiative that you're working on, or short video clips, if you package that up together with your press release, then the media outlets tend to pick them up. And then basically, if you're getting the message out on traffic safety and it's cohesive, and you're sharing the current fatality stats and the tips for motorists and vulnerable road users and your call outs, then that's another good way to get out the message. Training and educational resources. In New Hampshire, I know in Rhode Island they have something similar. It's the rules of the road for pedestrian bicyclists, and this course came up as a request from several police departments who are looking for either a refresher on pedestrian RSAs and regulations, and we worked with Police Standards and Training to work on this program. This is a course that we have our grantees take in order to get reimbursed. I would highly suggest, if you have any questions as far as training or educational resources that you can use for your police department or to hand out, to your community, then definitely follow up with your state's law enforcement liaison, and then be able to get you in contact with your highway safety office or the Police Standards and Training. So I would definitely say that training and educational resources are important in advancing that message. And finally, these are just the resources that I use on a daily basis, and they've been a godsend. Again, I would reiterate that there is really no need to reinvent the wheel. I know a lot of you don't have time to come up with the original content. I mean, if you do, that's great, but these are definitely resources that I go to, and I would encourage all of you to take a look through these different websites to see the great resources that they have available to you to enhance your pedestrian safety message. And again, my name is Jennifer Tramp, and if you have any further questions after the presentation, I can be reached by email at jennifer.p.tramp@dos.nh.gov. And at this time, I would like to hand over the presentation to Lieutenant Mike Sonia with the Massachusetts State Police. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, all, or good afternoon, depending on when you are watching. Lieutenant Mike Sonia, Massachusetts State Police, Traffic Program Section. We are short on time, so I am just going to jump right into the presentation. There we go. All right, Massachusetts, we have approximately 350 fatal crashes per year, of which 70 to 80 of them on average over the last 5 years have been involving pedestrians. Unfortunate stats come from that, but that number allows us to look at trends over time in Massachusetts. And by identifying trends, we can look at ways to reduce these crashes. With the number of 80 to fatal pedestrians a year, we decided to look at how we can educate the pedestrians on trying to reduce those numbers. We know that in every crash, three things have to happen. There's a motor vehicle, which also involves an operator, obviously the pedestrian, and a location or opportunity for all this to happen. With operators, we've given them driver's education classes. We've given enforcement, where we will crosswalk, we do distracted driving, try to reduce those numbers. The locations, the opportunities we reduce by identifying areas that may need more lighting, may need a crosswalk to be put in place, and engineering studies solve that problem. The pedestrian, though, is somewhat on a wild card. When we look at how to reduce the pedestrian aspect of it, we have to look at why they're there in the first place. So we looked at the stats that we've already seen. So we're not going to jump into this, but we're going to look at alcohol-related age for a bit to find out what part of the population of pedestrians do we need to educate to be better. We looked at the intoxicated pedestrians, and honestly, you can't educate intoxicated people. We, law enforcement, have tried over the years to talk to these people, and then we find out that it is a lot better to talk to these people while they're sober. You will never see a public service announcement in which they talk about educating, do not drink and walk. Be careful as you walk. Well, you're not going to see that. It would be nice, but we don't want anybody to make the implication of, well, if I can't walk, then I should drive. That would be even worse. There are certain things we can do for them. To take a side note, one of the things we'd like to see is if an area is prone to pedestrians that are intoxicated, restaurant row, bar, alley, let the drivers know that they may be seeing pedestrians in the roadway. We're going to talk about expectations a little later, but that's one way of reducing these crashes is, hey, drivers, you have to watch out for them because they may not be watching out for themselves. I give credit to those departments that have already acknowledged that this may be a problem and have come up with creative solutions to rectify it. Departments like you see here that have decided to, rather than protective custody or blindly watch these pedestrians walk away, why don't we safely get them off the roadway? Why don't we safely get them back to their house, their apartment, someplace where they can get transportation from other areas? I would love a ride in a BMW police cruiser, even if it is pink. While I looked for these stats, I came across that Ride Smart at Ohio State University. Just fell into it, and I happen to know a student at Ohio State University and called that person up and asked if they were aware of this program. She said she thinks she might have heard about it. Okay. The point of that being, if you have a program, it has to be known to people. Now, I'm not going to pick on the Ohio State University or the brothers and sisters of the Columbus Police Department, because maybe these advertisements are placed in bars and locations where they're seen and readily available for people to identify and use. But the point being, if you have a program, please advertise it. I don't think you can come up with a better advertisement than a pink and blue BMW letting people know that we're here to drive for you. Children. I'm going to jump right into educating our children. When we look back at the stats of the children hit as pedestrians, any child hit as a pedestrian is a tragedy. When you look at the ages, 5 to 9 had the lesser numbers of pedestrian crashes, and there's a reason behind that. 0 to 5-year-olds, they kind of don't even understand the dangers about being near a roadway. 9 to 14, they know everything. There's a different way of teaching them. You have to teach those children as if they know and reinforce their behavior. 14 and above, they're teenagers. Obviously, they know everything that is possibly out there, and us adults know nothing. But the 5 to 9-year-olds are our key targets. 5 to 9-year-olds, they're rule-oriented. They love the rules, and if we can capture these children at that age, we're going to have them for life. So here's how we educate the young. If we set up our trailer at a fair, park, we have a tent for educational purposes. If we can get the parent and the child to come over, we ask them about, do you know how to cross the road? There are certain things we've learned over time. Number one, we're teaching the parent as much as we're teaching the child. Without the parent's reinforcement of this behavior, this program goes nowhere. We also learned, like we did when we were children, look both ways before crossing the road. If you tell a child that, they just look both ways. They're not understanding what they're looking for. Okay, we have to teach the child. And what the rule is that we're teaching the child, you have to say no car 4 times in a row. And this is how we do it. We take 2 volunteers and we give them each a 3-ring binder. Inside the binder are pictures of empty streets and streets with a car on it. We bring the parent and the child to our mock street. 1 volunteer with 1 binder on the left, 1 volunteer with a binder on the right. As the child looks to one of the volunteers, they flip open the binder, and let's say that's a picture of no cars. Child says no car. Looks to the other direction. That one says has no cars in it. The child says no cars. They look back to the other side, and on this one, let's say that there's a car there. Oh, that's too bad, Johnny. The rule is you have to say no car 4 times in a row. We have to start over again. And we do it again. They look to the left, no car. Look to the right, car. Oh, sorry, Johnny, start all over again. Until they see no car, no car, no car, no car, cross the road with mom and dad. Cross the road with mom and dad, we give them a little campaign cover with a Mass State Police sticker on it, make them a trooper for the day, survive the exhibition, and off they go. What we're hoping out of this is, number one, child maintains a rule. More importantly, the next time the parent and the child are at an intersection, the parent looks at little Johnny and says, okay, Johnny, what's the rule? And have the child give the parent the rule. That's when we know that the rule works. For conservation of time, we're not going to show this video. Okay, but what it was is as I was driving down the road, I noticed a pedestrian walking on the side in Massachusetts. Let you know that this was done safely and by law, pulled over and activated the video, stuck onto the dash. So we do the hands-free law appropriately. But as I drove down the road and tried to identify the pedestrian that I knew was there, I didn't pick him up until he was 125 feet away from my car with bright halogen lights on, and I knew the pedestrian was there. It was a grandfather walking 2 feet off the breakdown lane, dressed in black, jeans on, In front of him, his grandson driving an electronic car. And as I look at that, I wonder, okay, if something had happened, obviously he's off the road, but was the pedestrian contributing to the fact that this might be a crash? And you have to say, yes, obviously no pedestrian deserves to get hit, but are there contributing factors that we can mitigate that we need to work on? That's where we educate the adult. So when we looked at what we should do, how we should educate, and what we should educate on, we talked to Sergeant Rick Wilansky. He was our crash investigation commander, and he gave us some ideas of what they see in the majority of the crashes in Massachusetts. And first of all is how well they blend into the background. And we obviously see this at nighttime, but we also see this in the fall, even with our police officers. Back in the day, we wore orange vests out there, and we blended into the foliage in the background and were very difficult to see doing traffic. So the point being, make yourself seen. All right, there was actually a pedestrian in that crossway. I think you can see the shoes, but based on the black truck in the background, it's very difficult to see the pedestrian. Our bicycle cops, our motorcycle units, even our mounted units, as they're patrolling on Route 1 at the Gillette games, they all have reflectorized material on so that you can see them. And that ability creates a contrast. Ever since man went through evolution, there is a connection between our eyes and our brain to pick up movement. You watch a nature program and you're looking at the jungle and you don't see the spotted leopard until the leopard jumps up and runs away. Our brain is geared towards movement. Even the reflectorized vests are nice, but it makes a lot more key for a operator to view you if that's moving. So reflectorized shoes, reflectorized on the legs, wrists, all come into a factor because the movement is more eye-catching. The grandfather that was walking down the road, the first thing I picked up were his white sneakers, and they were moving. And then I saw his hands because they were a different color of the surroundings. Unfortunately, it was at 125 feet. Reflectorized, you can start picking those up at a lot further distance. If the video works. So what you're going to see is a bunch of people coming towards you, and the goal is to find out how many you see. Very easy to see the reflectors, and you can see the one on the left actually stationary, but those legs moving pick up a lot easier. 250 feet, I see the white t-shirts. At 100 feet, there's the group. 7 people involved in that video. We saw 3. We saw the stats earlier of how fast vehicles move and how our eyes pick up attention and the distance that we can travel. And contributing factors for pedestrians. They've got to give the operator as much notice ahead of time in order to protect themselves. Ambient light, sun glare, dawn, dusk. Pedestrians, again, have to understand that this is a problem for the drivers. When that glare hits the windshield, it may completely blind them. There's not much you can do. There's no high visibility you can do at that time. The best thing is maybe educate the walker, the jogger, even the cyclist. This may not be the best time of the day to be out there. Give the operators a chance to do their movement from point A to point B, take some time out. That picture in the bottom right-hand corner is a video, and within about 5 seconds, there's a pedestrian walking right into that sunlight that you can't see. That one there is on the onus of the pedestrian to say, maybe this point here, maybe this location, I need to be aware of the motorists because they can't see me. Expectation is huge. We're the Massachusetts State Police, and we are booking crashes of pedestrians on our major highways. One of the reasons is that as people drive down Route 495, 95, 93 in Massachusetts, they're not expecting to see people in the roadway. Even our electronic cars that we're working on, they're trying to make that identification of should not be seeing this person there, so what am I seeing? I was stopped at a red light the other day. Grocery store to my left, tractor trailer truck unit in front of me, crosswalk within 100 feet. Female came in between the tractor trailer truck and my car to attempt to cross the street. And I'm sitting there wondering if a car was coming the opposite direction, would they expect to see the pedestrian come out from behind the tractor trailer truck? All right, it would be a smart operator to be doing that, but we don't. We all got trained on the rolling ball equals running child. Sometimes the pedestrian does not give that warning ahead that they'll be in the street. Expectation has to be taken as a contributing factor. So what we had planned in Massachusetts is a pedestrian project. How to educate the pedestrians. Where are we going to go? We picked a location of the state. It has a little bit of everything, a little bit of city, a little bit of rural area. We're trying to educate people on what good behavior is and how to do bad behavior better. We're going to reward good behavior. We'll educate the bad behavior. What we decided to do was get buy-ins from the local community, give us stuff that we can reward people with. Honestly, in this world we're living in right now, people were more than happy to give us some things to hand out. We would 10% off of pizzas. Local areas gave rides from their multi-complex inside, coffee, whatever it is. We tried to get as many things as we possibly could. Like we heard earlier, there are rules and regulations on pedestrians. We printed them out on a small card to let the pedestrian know what the behavior we expect of them are. Walking crosswalks, high visibility, walking on the correct side of the road. And then we took the little reward package and we put them in those little credit card size envelopes and things, little small things we could fit. We divvied them up in a whole bunch of envelopes. Goal, we're going to drive out there all day long and find people that are walking on the side of the road. If we find the jogger that's running on the appropriate side of the road with their high visibility on, we'll stop them, give them a little card and say thank you for their ability to stay safe. For the kids that we watched go across the road without using the crosswalk, very friendly. We gotta go up to them, stop them, hand them the little education on what the rules are, just give them an idea of what's happening. Hope that they get a buy-in that, we're just there to try to make sure that they're safe. Some of the problems we had to overcome was, number one, we didn't want to look like a force that to stop pedestrians. So again, friendly way of doing it, stop to educate, smiles on the face, just letting you know, we want to make sure you get home safe. Don't want to charge you the $20, which is a possibility, but these are just the rules, okay? Please pay attention for the next time. The actually giving out rewards we had to practice too, because I have runners in my unit, and I think they would kill me if I stopped them while they're running to hand them anything. So we actually set one of our troopers up in running gear that can run beside those joggers, hand them their rewards as they go along, explain what's happening, and send them on their way. Hoping to kick this off at the end of October. Things are happening in the world, so we hope it moves off, but that's our plan. Information will be at the end, so if you want to know how it turned out, you can always contact me. Big education on the pedestrian, trying to identify those contributing factors. I am going to release my screen now. One more slide. And send it over to Mr. William Jenkins of the lovely state of Vermont.
Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me. My name is Bill Jenkins. I'm a law enforcement liaison for the Vermont State Highway Safety Office. And today I'm going to talk to you about pedestrian safety assessments. Hold on a second. Okay, sorry about that. Looks like I have control again. So I'm going to talk to you about pedestrian safety assessments. The assessment can be used by a city or town to analyze a specific area in order to find solutions to pedestrian safety issues. I kind of want to emphasize that probably an entire presentation could be done on this subject, going for an hour or two. I'm not going to do that. This is just going to be a brief presentation to kind of an overview to give you an idea of what assessments can do for you. And if it's something that your community wants to pursue, I encourage you to research it further, get the details on how to organize or run an assessment. So the formal pedestrian assessment is a valuable tool in the effort to determine the causation of pedestrian crashes and to formulate recommendations to improve safety. So as you've heard earlier through the presentations, nationally, fatalities among pedestrians are increasing with over 6,000 pedestrian deaths in 2019. So the pedestrian assessment is another method of addressing this trend and hopefully make areas safer for pedestrians to move about. There's basically 9 steps to doing an assessment, and that would be to identify and engage stakeholders initially, collect and analyze data, choose an assessment tool, plan the event, invite the attendees, carry out the event, analyze the information, and prioritize concerns afterwards, and select those countermeasures and then to act upon them. So basically, the assessment is a method or way that allows you to dig down, find the root causes of pedestrian safety issues, and hopefully come up with solutions to those issues. So I'm going to talk to you about an assessment that the city of Rutland, Vermont did in 2015. The Vermont Agency of Transportation, or VTrans, selected Rutland City due to its diverse population, behavioral issues that were documented involving both pedestrians and motorists, complaints to the Rutland City PD, and that it would provide opportunity to create partnerships and initiate local participation. Just a little bit of information on Rutland City. Rutland is the 5th population of approximately 15,000 people. It's pretty small compared to other cities around New England. Also, in addition, Rutland does have quite a mixture of residents, tourists, and has 2 major routes that pass through. So it's common for people to pass through the city of Rutland when you're either going east to west or north to south on the west side of the state. So with a lot of what we do, it's important to start with the data. For the Rutland assessment, 5 years of data was analyzed from 2009 to 2014. Initially, the overall city data was examined, and then it was decided to focus on one stretch of roadway due to the high volume of pedestrian traffic. So again, like a lot of what we do, it needs to be data driven. You need to take the time ahead of doing the assessment to analyze that data and get some useful information from it. I feel that's important to narrow it down as much as possible. If the area looking at is too big or broad, it's going to be difficult to obtain meaningful data or to assess your results afterwards. But there are 3 ways you can conduct it or look at it. You can just do a spot location, which would just be like one intersection. You can target a bigger area, like a neighborhood or a business district, or you can do a corridor, which is what Rutland City did, which is they did about 2 blocks of West Street in Rutland City. In that 2-block area, there were 6 pedestrian crashes during the data between 2009 and 2014. And of those 6, 4 were the driver's fault and 2 were actually the pedestrian's fault. So Rutland decided to conduct 2 types of assessments, the NHTSA walkability assessment and the Federal Highway Administration's engineering assessment. So basically, you're looking at the behavior of what pedestrian operators of motor vehicles are doing, and then the engineering or structural issues that may be apparent. So at the Rutland assessment after the initial meeting, there was a strong feeling that they should be looking at both behavioral and engineering issues, which is what they did. So on the Federal Highway Administration side, they did the road safety audit, and then they decided to do the NHTSA walkability assessment due to it's kind of easy to use. It's kind of a checklist that people can use, and they did add a couple questions relating to things like senior issues or school children. And they also added a map to the walkability assessment so that people doing the assessment could actually pinpoint exact locations of issues or problems that they saw. So the walkability and engineering phases of the assessment were done on 2 different days and 2 different times. Both groups noted the problems they identified, and then meetings were conducted afterwards to compare notes and formulate recommendations. And in addition to the assessment groups on the ground, the city sent out online surveys to residents and asking pretty much the same questions that were on the walkability assessment, and then they consider those results and recommendations. So the walkability team did their walk or their assessment on April 6th. So they actually did it in three times of the day. So 7:30 in the morning, about noon, and then 4 p.m. to try to capture, the busier times of the day. 2 separate groups went out each time, and they tried to keep the groups to about 10 people so that the thinking was if the group is too large, you're going to start to affect the actions of both pedestrians and motorists. And they took about 30 to 40 minutes to complete their route and do their assessment. Then they returned back to the staging area where the leader of the groups did a debriefing and talked to people about what they saw. The engineering assessment took place on April 14th, and a smaller group with equipment, engineering equipment, to go out and look at things like crosswalk locations or the condition of the crosswalks or whether better lighting and things like that. And there was somebody who went with both groups so that they could convey information to the engineers of what happened on the walking part of it. I just want to touch on the survey. They sent the survey out prior to doing the walking or the engineering part, and they did make quite a bit of effort to publicize it, using both print media, television, radio, and social media. So after the assessment is completed, an action plan should be created. That action plan should identify the recommended action items to improve the safety of pedestrians. And obviously the recommendation should be from both groups, the walkability and the engineering, and in this case, the survey as well. So it's important to come together afterwards and come up with some clear recommendations that can be acted upon. So it was felt in Rutland that the input from all 3 assessments were valuable information, and they categorized the recommendations in 3 ways: behavioral, engineering, and a combination of the 2. And behavioral would be things like targeted enforcement. In areas, combination would be something like lowering the speed limit, where it would be both enforcement and an engineering change. And then the engineering part of it would be, like I said before, improving the condition of sidewalks, maybe relocating or making the crosswalks better, location of the crossing lights and things like that. So in summary, the pedestrian assessment can be a valuable method to research pedestrian safety issues that are not immediately or obviously apparent And it helps you to identify both behavior and structural causes of pedestrian crashes and hopefully solutions to those issues. And with that, send it back to Rick Sullivan.
Thank you very much, Bill. And what you're seeing on your screen now are a list of the presenters and their contact information. I want to thank the presenters for their time today. More importantly, I want to thank the leadership at the 5 Region 1 State Highway Safety Officers for their willingness to contribute their personnel and their generous support of this training. The training presenters would like to thank and acknowledge the Region 1 staff for their technical assistance and the continuing guidance, because without their assistance, successful completion of this project would have been more difficult. Attached in the next couple of slides are the information that will be available to be able to get a copy of this reporting, and also the material that will supplement it. Thank you very much for your time, and have a wonderful day.